Q&A, Ask Me Anything, where you can ask me anything you'd like about history, social studies, and the like. And for the next hour here on YouTube, and then an hour after that on Instagram, I will be answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like as we continue to grow our brand. We just started our Discord, we have our TikTok. You can follow me there on TikTok. But for the next hour or so, I will be answering all of your questions about history, social studies, geopolitics, both past and present, and all of that great stuff. Really looking forward to today. A nice 1 hour here on YouTube. We start at the right time, 4 o'clock Mountain Time, and then we'll go to 5 o'clock Mountain Time, and then we'll jump on over to Instagram and go until 6 p.m. Over there. So really looking forward to it. Hey, Harry. Hey, Solomon. Good to see you. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. I've got my wonderful moderator, Harry, here. Harry, could you put the Instagram in the chat? Because that's where people are going to be joining us for the live stream afterwards. Why does everyone pronounce gerrymandering wrong? So gerrymander refers to Elbridge Gerry, who was the governor of Massachusetts and actually the vice president during James Madison's second term? I think it's second term. Or no, it was Thomas Jefferson's second term. Gary was how you pronounced his name, and he, as governor of Massachusetts, proposed a map to cut up the state by congressional districts to help out his political allies. This example of cutting it up didn't become gerrymandering, Elbridge Gerry. It became gerrymandering, perhaps because it's easier to say and more fun to say, and we're more used to it. So it's a historical mispronunciation for the way that governors and politicians try to draw up congressional segments to favor their party in America, because congressional districts are based on population size, whereas senators, there's 2 for every state. It's equal. So Wyoming's a small population state, but it has the same number of senators as California, the largest population state, but California has far more House representatives. So there's a quick American civics lesson. Steve, good to see you. Gayahan is asking, famous historical figures who struggled with depression. Muhammad, I believe Napoleon did. I'm trying to think about who else struggled with depression. Lincoln clearly did. Lincoln lost a son during the war. Lincoln carried the whole weight of the Civil War on his shoulders during most of his presidency. If I am correct, I'm trying to think of other historical figures who were major depressed. Dostoevsky, if you're talking about writing, but there's just a few. Lincoln, Muhammad, those are some. Ironically, though, he didn't like the law, but the party basically made him. Yes, he was answering to the representatives in the government there. So I'm trying to think of other figures in history who've struggled with depression. It's more because we got clinical depression and more diagnoses in the 21st and 20th century. It's easier for us to look at those 2 centuries for examples of that. I know Blackjack Pershing, the famous World War I or World War II, depending on how you call it, general, who led the U.S. Army at that time, he struggled with depression because he lost his family in a horrific accident when he was really young. So interesting stuff there. Great question, by the way. Good to see you. John Mason, explain about how Muhammad struggled with depression. Muhammad, it's written in the hadiths, and not the hadiths, the sirah, that Muhammad had issues with depression. He died not knowing what was saying he didn't know what was truth at the end of the day. So there was different problems that Muhammad struggled with throughout his entire life, if you're going to believe all the sirah and hadiths. And John, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. If you like the history I'm talking about, the social studies, the good questions that are being asked by my wonderful friendly neighborhood historians, consider becoming a friendly neighborhood historian by liking and subscribing. It's as easy as that. Castleray, in Sunnah, what's the source you quote it? In Sunnah. What do you mean in Sunnah? If I'm correct, I do not know which Sunnah it is, which Sirah it is, but there is testimony to Muhammad saying that, his last words obviously being, I don't know what's truth. There are questions about Muhammad's sexuality, transvesticism. There's other issues that he struggled with throughout his life that may or may not be associated with depression. So there you go. I don't know, obviously it would be anachronistic to look back 1,400 years ago and say this guy had depression. It's easier for us to look at Lincoln. The direct sources about Muhammad's life are extremely hairy. We don't really have any personal testimonies that are actually written in the 7th century. So yeah. Yes, a specific quote. Did I have a specific quote about Lincoln? Did I have a specific quote about any of the other figures? So they are not outrageous claims, John. They're actually verifiably true. Why would the leader of an entire religion who had claimed all his life that it was true, to the chagrin and oppression of him, say at his deathbed that he didn't know what was real or what was true? So These are all things that are mentioned in different issues about. I don't go to every single direct example to quote certain things about Jesus or any other religious figure. So I'm not lying. I might. So there you go. Let me see here. So, happy Friday to all of you. Hopefully you're getting your weekend started the right way. Consider liking and subscribing, becoming a friendly neighborhood historian. If you have a question about history or social studies, consider asking and putting it in the chat. Yes, John, yes. I'm a historian. I've read a lot of this stuff. I've studied it. Secondhand sources, direct quotes. I don't go into a diatribe about every single source that I have. And by the way, you can't cite any sources, so there you go. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, M. This is where I answer questions related to history, social studies, and the like. For Viscount Castlereagh, by the end of his life, it was considered basically incoherent and said he was guilty of homosexuality offenses. Yes, he was depressed and punished because the British had really oppressive laws about sodomy and homosexuality in the 19th century. Oh, John, I'm still waiting for you to tell me, by the way, because I've asked you this many times, when was the Quran written? You've gone on my videos, you've attacked me on multiple occasions, you've said racist things about me, but you can't give me any evidence, and then you demand I quote a source. So get out of here with that. You believe in the flat earth? Well, that's unfortunate for you because that's not true. The Flat Earth Society does have supporters all around the globe, though. Yes, medical depression isn't just feeling bad. That's true. Historically, who were the first people to sail to Australia? There's the Maori who settled in New Zealand, different Aboriginal groups. I believe many of, I don't know exactly where they were from. A lot of people believe that they migrated from, there's this pattern of migration. You get mainland Asians over the centuries and millennia. You can't say Asians as in Chinese exactly, migrating to Polynesia, Micronesia, migrating to Australia, migrating to the West Indies, Native Americans obviously have some sort of migrational parallels to that, with many people believing that the vast majority of scholars believing that the Native Americans originally came from Asia and migrated over the Bering Strait and everything else. So, was the church anti-science during the so-called Dark Ages? I've heard this is a big misnomer. I don't like the term Dark Ages because I don't think that civilization was really that backwards. Obviously, there was a breakdown of infrastructure, public records, and things like that you got from people. You have some sort of religious oppression and things like that. You have the breakdown of Roman political order. You don't have a coherent political power. You have a rising religious power with great influence, the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church preserved many of the ancient writings of the Greek and Egyptian philosophers and scholars, including the scientists, including the Archimedes of the world and the Ptolemies of the world. So no, it wasn't necessarily anti-science. The main claim against Catholic Europe being anti-science comes with the Inquisition, especially of Galileo, the condemnation of Copernicus, many people believing that this undermined and contradicted biblical testimonies that said that the earth stood still, which is why there are some Catholics even to this day who believe in geocentrism. Michael, I'm good. I'll pledge allegiance later. That's true. The Indonesians, interesting. Thank you, M. In Indonesia, to say the Indonesians is almost like saying the whites, the Europeans, the Africans. Indonesia is a series of so many different islands of so many different peoples. And of course, you have all the other East Indies areas there. Yeah, so are you an atheist, anti-religious? No, I'm not anti-religious. I'm not an atheist. I don't say which religion I am. I don't go into details about how I practice, but I do believe in some sort of higher power. Mizra, thank you for joining us from Bangladesh. I really appreciate that. You will probably like my video that's coming out 8 p.m. Eastern today, where I explain the history of the caste system and the Indian subcontinent and the emergence of the first Indian civilization in Pakistan. So I really hope you guys check that out. I'm really looking forward to that. That drops at 8 p.m. Eastern today. I'm looking forward to that. So if you're enjoying what you're hearing, you're enjoying what I'm talking about, please like and subscribe. So, yeah. Let's see here. Watching from Kuala Lumpur, from Malaysia. That's awesome. So we've got people from Malaysia, we have people from Bangladesh, and we consistently have people. We have Harry, my great moderator, who is from Britain. We've got Hars, who's an American. We've got Simon the Bunny, who's a Brit. We have people who join us from India, who join us from Bangladesh. We've got people who join us from Sweden and from Norway, from Russia and Ukraine, from Israel and Palestine. We try to bring everybody from all different walks of life and backgrounds and beliefs here to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel from Germany. That's awesome. Yeah, it's a lip shiner to be sure. I went 12 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. No, I think I bit it and it peeled. It's the summer. It gets dry here in the United States, and so, yeah. So ergo, my lips get dry. Sometimes they split, but yeah. Ozzy's joining us from New Hampshire. Good to see you. My background, I am a historian with both a master's and bachelor's in social studies. And salam to you too, Ramat. He wrote with Metternich, the post-Napoleonic. Yeah, and everybody only focuses on Metternich because Castlereagh was disgraced because of his sexuality, which shows you exactly the type of world that they were living in even after the Enlightenment in the 19th century. Yeah, I don't know exactly how it happened. I did not try to eat myself though. Mizra Aziz Islam, this man and Prophet Muhammad was debating if he was transgender and if he was gay. They wouldn't have understood the concepts of either of those terms. Both of those are modern renditions, probably referring to homosexuality or sodomy and transvesticism or cross-dressing. So yeah. I never said Muhammad was gay. I never said he was transgender. I've said that there are different accounts that say different things about Muhammad that were written centuries later, and some of them talk about these different topics and talk about his interest in those typical topics. So here's how it goes, Steve. I'm a social scientist, so I study all different types of things that are associated with history. Social studies is history, politics, geography, things that are like right next to it. Social sciences refer to things like religious studies, psychology, geopolitics, things like that are a little bit more than just social studies. So history is part of social studies, which is part of social sciences. It's like a concentric circle. I didn't say he was either of those things. I said those were things that were written about him that he supposedly struggled with or questioned or things like that. I don't know if those things have anything to do with him having depression. I'm not saying for sure, because you know what? No one can say for sure because we don't have records about it. Yeah. Let me see. Yes, I did not say that, Raul. He's making stuff up. Let me see. I mean, you're a big fan of Octavian, the way he just gave up Cicero and let him be murdered. That was disgraceful. Surely even you can agree with that. Yes, Octavian did plenty of disgusting, terrible things, as did almost all Roman emperors. The reason I'm a fan of Octavian isn't because of the purging of the Roman Republic and the killing of people like Cicero. It's because Octavian was politically brilliant, an exceptional leader. He's everything George Washington was to the United States, to the Romans. A man who knew how to lead, but like all great leaders, knew what he didn't know. One of the biggest mistakes that Hitler made in fighting the war against the United States, what I call World War III, what a lot of people consider to be World War II, is that Hitler consistently made mistakes based off of saying things and deciding things that he just didn't know better, not listening to his generals, thinking the Allies were landing at Calais instead of at Normandy, because Calais is closer to in the English Channel, believing the theory of the decoy army of Patton, all of that stuff. A great leader, especially, doesn't get too high on his britches, especially after years go by. He consistently proves that he says, you know what, I don't know about this, but I'm going to find somebody who does. Octavian did it with Agrippa the same way George Washington did it with Alexander Hamilton and putting him in charge of the national banking system, which today is the anniversary, as I do daily histories on this video, or daily history videos on this channel every day, of when Hamilton was shot by Aaron Burr. Can you talk a bit about Gregory the Great? Is he one of the best church leaders ever? I think he ordered Britain evangelized. He was the one who sent Augustine of Canterbury to England to begin proselytizing them. But there was already proselytization. This would be after St. Patrick historically. So, yeah, John, I never said any of that. You're just making stuff up. Scott, I understand a lot of people not liking religion, believing in science. The truth of the matter is I'm a historian, and in studying the histories of different people and their civilizations, I have to study their religions. If I'm going to be good at this stuff, I have to study everything about them. Yes. Yeah. Let me see here. So should Germany start the Third World War, or should we wait for the AI to do it? Interesting question. I already think Germany did start the Third World War. I think the 7 Years' War is the First World War. The Great War is the Second World War, and then the war with the Nazis would be World War III. Let me see. So, yeah. Octavian was politically brilliant. He destroyed the Republic. He murdered his opponents. He used the military to get what he wanted. He basically just destroyed everything Rome stood for. You really have to understand how decrepit the Republic had become Because on the one hand, Harry, you and I have had this conversation before. You talk about all the good things Julius did in how but he was equally targeting the Republic as well. And then Octavian does the same things and avenges his uncle, who was killed by the Republicans, not American Republicans, but the senators. They were called the optimates. They were the political establishment. Caesar had challenged them, just like Pompey, just like his hero Marius, just like Sulla, just like all of these guys in the first century. And the Roman Republic was considered corrupt and dying. Octavian put it out of its misery. So I suppose we need to apply cultural relativism here, but why were gladiator public killings a thing in the Roman Empire? Did the average person just stomach the slaying of another human? I wouldn't say stomach it as much as it was entertaining for them. A lot of people in psychology have talked about how sports is kind of a decelerated version of gladiator fights, of war, where you can have competition without necessarily bloodshed. So it was a way to entertain people in an extremely bloody civilization that was used to warfare and combat, and seeing that as only glorious. I haven't played GTA. I did play GTA 5. I don't know about GTA 6. We'll see. Bread and circuses, exactly. Yeah, Harry, Octavian wasn't going to try to fix the system that had killed his uncle, and he was a power-hungry bureaucrat, just like they were. Yeah. John, salam. There you go. Salam just means peace. There's nothing wrong with saying it, just like there's nothing wrong with saying shalom. The Roman Republic was run by alien and superducks that planted Jesus and also started an In-N-Out Burger. Everyone knows this. Yeah, that's the secret in the Epstein files the government doesn't want you to know. Anyways, Caesar tried to fix the Republic. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And he did go around murdering people. That's how he killed. He destroyed Sulla's army. The idea that Caesar didn't try to do that. The Romans were vicious, but look at some of the games we play today. It's basically just them in real life. Football is not gladiator combat. People do not die. Usually, very rarely do people die in football, rugby, or soccer. No, it doesn't. It's an Arabic word. Arabic is a language. I'm allowed to speak it, John. Salam. It means peace. Yes. Good job. You've defended Muhammad. You're wrong, but you've defended him. Caesar was a menace to the Roman Republican establishment. And, video games? Yeah, video games are, video games are just violent recreations of that, but it's digitized. Whereas the bread and circuses that Gaiahan is referring to, whether horses and chariots trampling people down or other things, yeah. I am right, you Jew. See, this is what, So I don't know if anyone keeps track of the channel consistently, but I made a video last week where I made this atrocious claim that Medina is older than Mecca and has more historical evidence of existing at the time of Muhammad than Mecca, which is totally 100% true. And ever since then, I've been getting used to insults like this: racist, crude, bigoted, all of these stuff. Nobody knows what I am, and that's like how I like to keep it. So there you go. Kaijul. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and I am answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like. And Caesar did at least pretend to follow the traditions, laws, and Republican Yes, he pretended, then tried to seize power, then the senators killed him for it, and then Octavian avenged him by killing those senators. That's not destroying the Republic. That's fixing a problem. John, do you want to go back through the comments? We can go through them. I mean, you literally just said, I'm a white man giving my white perspective, and that's why I think this way, which is absurd. I'm a historian giving a historian's perspective. My race has nothing to do with it. As under the Constitution of a Republic, you don't need the approval of the Senate. The only thing you needed was the approval of a council of the plebes or plebeian assembly. Yes. And he was about to become dictator for life. They couldn't let that happen, so they murdered him, and then his nephew avenged him. So, is Muhammad a false prophet? What do you mean by that? I'm not making a religious statement. I'm making historical statements that people just happen to not like. And Bandito, it's good to see you. It's been a while. Yeah, Kaiju, I don't know why people believe that. And Caesar did try and fix the Republic, this huge reform bill. Yes, Caesar did some great things, which is all the more reason to avenge him and destroy the institution that killed him. You're arguing my point. The majority of Muslims are not actually other races. Actually, Arabs are the minority. There are plenty of white Muslims and Christian and Chinese, etc. Yes, there are plenty of Muslims all throughout the world. How did they get there? Before Saudi Arabia and modern stability, how did the Hajj work? Did everyone still do pilgrimages? So the Ottomans actually controlled Mecca and the Hajj for a long time. Any Muslim power that could control Mecca and Medina was seen as the legitimate successors of the caliphate and could establish a caliphate. And so they were in charge of moderating the Hajj for the Muslims in their area. This became a big point of contention with the Safavids in Persia in the 16th and 17th centuries because they were Sunni, 12 Shia Muslims. The Ottomans were Sunnis. And so they fought many wars for dominance over the Islamic world. And because they fought many wars to see who would be the dominant force of the Islamic world, the Hajj became dominated by that empire. So any Islamic caliphate, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, or the Ottomans were in control of Mecca. And so they were in control of the Hajj, and they regulated the Hajj and how the Hajj worked. And then the Saudis were an Arabic family that the British made deals with that basically allowed them to become the ones to take over the Arabian Peninsula and become. That's why it's called Saudi Arabia. Nobody had heard of the Sauds in any geopolitical sense before the 20th century. Let me see here. In what way did Octavian did not destroy the Republic? I never said he didn't destroy the Republic. The Republic was a corrupt institution that was on its last legs when Octavian got there, and by avenging his father, he destroyed it. You're glorifying a republic that didn't exist by the time of Caesar, Pompey, Crassus, Cassius, Brutus, Antony, and Octavian. In regards to how his messages were received, I also had an issue with this whole case. I've done videos. Dominic, you should go check out my video where I talk about the early Islamic history and things like that. I'm not going to say whether I think someone is a prophet or not. I'm not going to make a religious declaration about any of that stuff. I have made declarations recently that have gotten me in trouble, even in this group chat or even in today that has gotten me in trouble. And my main contention is that there is no solid evidence of Mecca existing at the time of Muhammad or of Muhammad. This is historical. This is not religious. So I'm not going to make a proclamation about whether he was the prophet or not. Just like I'm not going to make a proclamation about Jesus being the Messiah or of Muhammad writing the Quran. I'm sorry. It's not there. And the only reason I'm upset about it is because I've been bullied about this all week. So, free Palestine. Free Palestine from who, Gaza? The Saudis and rulers were installed by the British, that we can agree on. Yes, the British wanted to continue to get oil. They helped create OPEC. They helped create that area of the world. They controlled Yemen for a solid amount of time. And basically, the Saudis gave them what they wanted, John. If you watch my live stream lecture from 2 weeks ago, that's exactly what I did, or 3 weeks ago, I discussed how the Middle East came to be. I was before the U.S. attacked Iran, or it was right after the U.S. attacked Iran. I do live stream lectures every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So I don't hate the Prophet Muhammad. I don't hate anyone. I'm making historical claims. So, do you have any interest in more modern history, as in the late 1800s and 1900s, the industrial development of what led to increase in population and living standards in such a short time of school? It's fascinating. And you might like my video coming out later about India and how India is growing and developing. I've talked about, and it's an ancient history video, but yes, I talk about modern history, contemporary history, geopolitics, and all of that stuff all the time. So, yes, no, Harry, he did do it to avenge Caesar and to advance his own points. So what? He was ambitious. So was Caesar, so was Brutus, so was Marius, so were the vast majority of political leaders. You're not going to get a selfless Cincinnatus in the 1st century BC in the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic. I've noticed you always reply, free Palestine from whom? Would the answer not be the strong arm of Israel and also Hamas? Yes, the free Palestine moniker always is, it's to free it from Jewish occupation, the Israeli occupation. But you also have to understand there's an extremely corrupt government in the West Bank running it, and there's a terrorist organization running it in Gaza. A clean sweep of all of this could lead to an actual stable, free Palestine run by the Palestinians. But the Republic did exist. There was still massive respect for consuls, for tribunes. Yes, but the Republic was a shell of its former self. Watch the first episode of Star Wars. That's the Republic. That's what Lucas based it on. What happened to my lip? I got it. I think I was chapped and then it got split. I don't really know. I don't really care. And the Republic could have been saved because you wouldn't get one person who could effectively paralyze the government. No. And the senators thought Caesar was paralyzing the government, Harry. So, I don't know what you're going with there. And I'm caught up to the chat. We have a light crowd today, but we're having some good conversations. So if anyone have a question about history, social studies, or the like, I'll be happy to answer it. Gaia, I'm just scrolling through. Gaia Han, sorry for my biblical ignorance, but was Abraham a Jew or a Hebrew? Does he predate those two terms? Hebrew was an ancient Egyptian term for servant or slave that was applied to a group of people who were enslaved in Egypt, and that is the Jews. You could say he's the first Jew, but the term Jew is associated with the southern kingdom of Judah, which was conquered in the 6th century BC, probably about 1,000 years after he supposedly existed. And then you have Judea, which was the land of the Jews at the time of Jesus. So it's anachronistic to call Abraham a Jew, but he is the founder of the Jewish faith. Yeah. Let me see here. And the Romans put a lot of weight at the time in making sure that you needed nearly everyone to do anything because it was part of us. No one could. I agree with you, Harry, but I'm sorry. The Roman Republic was not what it used to be. Let me see. Anyways, that looks like, John, the next time you have a thought, just forget typing it into the chat. Can you give some information about the Falklands conflict? Actually, Harry might even be better suited as a British historian than I am, but I'll give it my best try and we'll see if Harry approves of my description. The Argentines wanted to take the Falkland Islands from the British. The British have a few colonies left over from their empire, despite the decolonization of the 1950s and 60s. Margaret Thatcher, a conservative and a nationalist, wanted to protect the Falkland Islands, and so a war was fought. The British won the war, and the Falkland Islands stayed as part of the British colonies. They're Bermuda, the Bahamas, and the Falklands are all still controlled by the British. There you go. Let me see. What did the Roman empires refer to itself as? The Roman emperors usually refer to themselves as God. Caesar was the usual term taken. Later on, there was the Augustus was the junior emperor, or Caesar was the junior emperor. Augustus was the major emperor when the empire split in two in the 4th century. Let me see. Was it the Roman city-state first, and then the Republic, and then the Roman Empire? Yes, that's an excellent way of looking at it. It was actually a kingdom. For a very short amount of time, it was a kingdom of a city-state with kings who were tyrants. Several of them were the Etruscans, and this revolution of Tarquinius, who was the most oppressive of these tyrants or kings, eventually led to the formation of the Roman Republic and created a legacy of not having kings or dictators. So they went above it and had the imperator, the princeps, the first above equals. So Harry, Augustus doesn't call himself emperor right away. He lets the Republic, he lets the Senate implode and give him more and more power as the decades go on. All of the titles that Augustus has, imperator, princeps, and of course Augustus itself, are given to him by the Senate. So, I have a history of disliking a certain group of individuals. No, not here. Let me see. I cut my lip. Sorry. Yeah. He Black, great to see you. Thank you for joining the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. If you're enjoying the history we're talking about, consider liking and subscribing. And we're going here, and then after that, we're going to head over to Instagram and see what we can do over there. We're going to live stream on Instagram for the 3rd time. I'm looking forward to it. So if you want another hour of Q&A, you can ask us there. Shakar, hello. Basically, when the Spanish Empire collapsed, the Federation of Argentina, which is one of the colonies, got its independence, claimed the Falkland Islands. Yes. I forget when the British colonized them, but I believe it was before the 1800s. At its peak, was ancient Greece comparable to Rome, or was the peak Roman Empire ever even better? I always think of ancient Greece as basically just as advanced. The Romans were stronger. The Romans were more centralized. The Romans controlled almost all of the Greek Empire. The only thing they couldn't do that the Greeks did do was defeat the Persians. But the Parthians were a very different animal compared to the Achaemenid Persian Empire. It's okay, Ozzy. I'm just glad you're here. Which were at the time claimed by Spain. Yes, so when the British came back to the islands, which they claimed but not governed, the Argentines said that that was illegal. Anyways, we had more money and more guns, so we kicked them out. We took control of the islands. Yes, and then eventually the Argentines wanted to take that, and Thatcher wasn't standing for it, and it was a big move of imperialism by the British in a time when imperialism was no longer popular, and that's why people have criticized it, although a lot of Brits really liked it and like the fact that they still have several different lands that they control. Hello, Tanuki. Good to see you again. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Yes. I don't know. I think that was after Perón. I think Perón died in 75, so it was a few years later that the Falklands were going on. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. If you're just joining us, you're halfway through our Q&A part 1. We're going to have another one tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, so please come by to then and join us on Instagram if you would like. Harry, can you please put our chat handle in, or the Instagram handle in the chat? We do an hour of Q&A here. We'll do an hour of Q&A over on Instagram, and then we'll do an hour of Q&A tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern here. I'm not super read up on pre-medieval history, but it is an interesting period, both for Roman history, but even more so the ancient Greek city-states. If you want to check out my video on, I have long-form videos that drop every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm excited for one tonight. It's about the start of Hinduism and the caste system in India. The truth of the matter is I have one on the Peloponnesian War and Athens versus Sparta. There are so many different Greek city-states. Everyone focuses on Athens and Sparta because they had the most undue influence on Greek society and culture. But basically, if a Greek city-state system had never existed and the Greeks had been a unified country, the Persians would have been destroyed a lot sooner, and you never would have had the rise of Alexander the Great conquering all of the Middle East, Palestine, and Egypt. And yes, SM, I agree with you, by the way. What single historical event, in your opinion, demarcates the start of the modern period? Maybe something around the 7 Years' War or the killing of the Archduke Ferdinand. Depends what we mean by modern. A lot of people believe the Protestant Reformation started the modern era, or Columbus started the modern era. It's called the early modern era. I would say, if we're talking about modern, I'd say it's the Great War. Just overthrows this Napoleonic era of general peace on the European continent, starts a flurry of colonization movements, ends a flurry of empires. The Ottomans, the Austro-Hungarians, the Russians all collapse. The British start decolonizing after the war. The Middle East is created because of that. The United States becomes the predominant power in the Western world. Changes everything. Japan and Italy being spurned by that war lead to them creating militant nationalist governments that will obviously be part of the next world war. And of course, Germany is just totally throttled by it. How far is the U.S. away from becoming a fascist country, or am I overreacting? I don't know. I think it's always there. The idea, what was his name? Sinclair Lewis wrote in the 1920s that basically the United States, the idea that it can't happen here is impossible. Yes, I love Myanmar. Myanmar endured a lot of the fighting. The Japanese were trying to get to India, and Myanmar, or Burma as the British called it, was the borderlands. And it was that eventually led the British to give Myanmar its independence after the war. Basically, both world wars in the 20th century ruined the prestige and the glory and glamour that the Europeans had tried to carve out for their empires, and this led to decolonization efforts by both the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Kumo, hello. We sent our military, we took them, yes. Also, Sparta gets attention because, to be honest, it's the only city-state of Greece that people in general have heard about only because of the movie. True. And the Spartan warriors, but there's so much about Sparta. They're well-educated. They were extremely politically diverse. Women had more rights in Sparta than in any other civilization up to that point in history. Women were the educators. Women were the fighters. Women did incredible things in Sparta that they couldn't do even in Athens, even though Athens was a democracy. We held a referendum in 1983, and 98% of the islanders wanted to stay British. Can you do a video on the Roman Kingdom? Yes, I probably should, about the 7. That's a good one, Harry. You just gave me an idea. on my next long-form video. Although my next one for Monday will be about the French Revolution. So, anyways. Weren't French soldiers still trying to use Napoleonic tactics at the very beginning of the Great War? I think they marched in line like some of the colonial army, and then Germany moved. Yeah, and that led to the creation of the trench warfare system on the Western Front. Yeah, John, you're having a hard time today. Just gonna say it. Not trying to be mean, but you're having a hard time today. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you have your questions, but you're picking fights. Why is it impossible if the U.S. will be a fascist country? I never said it's impossible. I'm from Switzerland, and I guess if we would only elect fascist politicians, we could become a fascist country. Unlikely, but possible. It's not impossible that the U.S. or any country, especially in the West with democracy, can vote in fascist governments. The Nazi, I don't want to say the black shirts were voted in. Mussolini basically stole power. But the brown shirts and the Nazis were elected, did have the plurality in 1932 and 1933 elections. So, and that's our Instagram. Please follow us, friendly_history1. What do you think? Is the government in Myanmar actually as bad as the media claims? I know the real answer, just wondering your thoughts. I don't know a huge amount about it. I can't speak, Naya, on something that I don't know for sure. I haven't studied the current geopolitical situation. I know, I always forget her name. I'm sorry. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's been fighting to make Myanmar an independent country, and all of that stuff. And she's always kind of been under house arrest, and the government doesn't want to upset a lot of people in the country who love her. But it's kind of a military run system similar to how Egypt is. That's my best knowledge. If I am wrong, please correct me. Please define fascism. Thank you, Ozzy. Nobody defines fascism anymore. And I've done videos about this. By the way, Harry, I'm going to do my long-form video Monday about the French Revolution for Bastille Day, but next Friday it's going to be about the 7 monarchs of Rome. Thank you for that. You gave me my video. Please define fascism. We need to define it in order to understand what it actually is. Fascism is not patriotism or nationalism. Not all nationalists are fascists, but all fascists are nationalists. The fasce is a Roman term that Mussolini used. It was actually an Italian scholar before Mussolini, but Mussolini created the first real government around it. And the symbol of this government was the fasce. It was a bundle of sticks tied together with an axe on the top that the Romans would use as a symbol of unity and power. That is where the term comes from. So it represents unity, the sticks tied together, and sticks are harder to break when they're tied together, but it also represents militarism because of the axe on the top. So it represented Roman imperialism and militarism. So it's a militant form of, so I would say that's a technical definition. Ideologically, it is a militant nationalist belief that creates an authoritarian government where the military and the government works closely with corporations and other organizations to control power. So they use the machinations of different societal institutions in order to keep and control their masses. Franco did it by using the Catholic Church in Spain. Perón did it in Argentina, Pinochet in Chile, and of course Mussolini in Italy. And my theory about Mussolini to this day is that if Mussolini had just been a nationalist and just kind of kept himself in Italy and not allied with the Nazis, the United States would have let him stay in power because he was anti-communist. So the Senate under the monarchy is fascinating. It is true. Yes, it's kind of this nascent thing. It proves once again that freedom is a good way to go. It's like the Mongols had basically religious freedom because their religion was tied to their nomadic ways and homelands, so they didn't push it on others. They worshiped the god of the sky. But something Temujin, aka Genghis Khan, and his successors like Ogadai, Mengke, and of course Kublai Khan did in China was, let's take the cult. We want money, power, and control. And if we're going to keep our money, power, and control, we need to adapt to the cultures of these recent areas. The Mongols in Russia and in Central Eurasia became similar to the Turkic nomadic peoples of that region. That is why they were called the Tatars. I'm a Russian historian by trade technically, and I do Russian history videos on the channel all the time. The Ilkhanate in Persia became a Muslim Khanate. Embracing Shia Islam, or I don't know if it was Shia at that point. Islam, I think Persia became Shia in the 16th century when Ismail and the Safavids took over. But yes, you've got different types of Mongol governments that were based on the culture and the religion and whatever was important. Once again, using those societal institutions, because history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes a lot, folks, to control the area. And so the Yuan dynasty in China fashioned itself, a Chinese dynasty, embraced Buddhism, and had an extremely cosmopolitan court. That's why we've got Samuel Taylor Coleridge and Xanadu to Kublai Khan. So And the Mongols were fascinating because they were extremely tolerant if you surrendered and did whatever they said, and they were completely cutthroat if you didn't. Do you think the U.S. would benefit to change from one president to like 7, as we have in Switzerland, from 4 different parties? Coalition governments are becoming more and more common. Germany, Switzerland, there's more and more political parties all the time. The French kind of have coalition governments. The Israelis certainly do in their Knesset. The British are close to it, with the Reform Party and the Green Party and the Labour Party and the Green Party emerging and the Liberals and Conservatives retreating. The Reform Party is the favorite to win the next parliamentary elections, but they're going to need Conservatives to support them. So coalition governments are on the rise, to be sure. I think in Canada, they even occasionally need this. So it'll be interesting. I just don't see the money that's invested in U.S. political elections makes sure that the Republicans and the Democrats will control everything. If Elon Musk and his America Party ever go anywhere, then the Republicans are constantly going to be begging them to vote with them because they're going to be a little bit closer to Republicans, at least MAGA Republicans, than they are to the Democrats. Solomon, I'm glad you're back. That emperor who was the most sadistic, how did he manage to commit so many crimes against humanity without being exposed or arrested? Which emperor are you referring to, John? So basically, non-militant fascism couldn't exist. You need a strong arm authority with enforcement power. What historical society hasn't used force to enforce domestic power? Force is always an option in a democracy or in a Republican form of government. Force is always a possibility, but it isn't a default necessary. Fascism and Nazism, force is how you get power, or it's how you keep power. Democracy doesn't necessarily need that. So, and Ozzy, I hope you approve of my definition of fascism. The king dies to elect Senate elected one of the follow senators to be the Rex for a 5-day term. He would basically be a king for 5 days, but his job was to submit a nomination for the next. Yeah, but they were tyrants, especially the Etruscans like Tarquinius. Why were Mongols so aggressive and different in their combat war style? They were extremely effective at fighting, John, and they had mastered horse archery and cavalry tactics, and basically they would go to a city and they would say, if you surrender, we'll let everyone live. If you don't surrender, you're going to be an example. So they would take people outside of a city, burn the city to the ground, and then kill all the people. They would take members of families out and show them their relatives being burned or killed in the city. They were very cruel, and then they would tell stragglers, usually the last couple of remaining people, I believe it was them who did this, go and tell everyone what you just saw, and that's coming to this next city. The hope was for submission. Yeah. Jen, good to see you, because no one knows this country, and from what I've experienced, both sides bad. Hopefully, I know a little something. Safavids under Shah Ismail. Yes, the 12 Shia Islam that took over Iran was basically based on the idea that Ismail was the direct successor to Muhammad, so they claimed the caliphate for themselves. As far as I know, Switzerland is the only true direct democracy. Is this correct? I think it is. Poland was close for a while. They had it for a little bit, but no. Reform are the most popular. They won't win a majority, and the other parties haven't said they won't work with them. And the other parties have said they won't work with them. The Reform is going to get the plurality. And I don't see Conservative and Labor forming a coalition to stop Reform. How did communism make it into China? Good question. So communism made it, so the communist movement, the Gomchang, as it is known, came to China mainly through Mao and others. It obviously was popular at the beginning of the 20th century with the Russian Revolution, and then Mongolia becomes communist in 1922. The first Asian communist state was Mongolia. Mao was almost completely destroyed by Mao was almost completely destroyed by the nationalists, Sun Yat-sen and his successor Jiang Jieshi, or better known to the West as Chiang Kai-shek, and was forced to retreat with the very few stragglers he had left. This is called the Long March. They settled in the mountains for a while, and they started to gain supporters because the nationalists were extremely repressive of farmers and the lower classes, and the lower classes went with the devil they didn't know rather than the devil they did know. And then the Japanese invaded, starting the Second Sino-Japanese War, which is what I believe is the start of the Third World War. I know I have crazy opinions, but basically, Mao gained more and more prestige by fighting for China to defeat the Japanese, and then fought a 4-year war. And the fact that he wasn't killing the peasants that he thought were suspicious or trying to purge his political opponents made him sympathetic to a lot of the Chinese, and that's how he was able to eventually win control. This isn't to say that Mao is a sympathetic character at all. He certainly wasn't. He forced people to carry him around on a palanquin, which is the thing they carry royalty on, when he was during the Long March, if I'm correct. He was not a George Washington figure at all. We have a party here in Sweden. Oh, you're in Sweden. Oh, that's awesome. That have run for parliament for like 35 years, and their only political point is to give back absolute power to the king. A monarchist party. That's interesting. An absolute monarchist party. So unless all the other parties will not work together, reform, UK will not form government. They're going to win the elections, and they might win the majority. And I think they will try to pick off conservatives. So if fascism by default uses force to enforce domestic rule, would this not apply to the CCP and Stalin's insanity? There's a lot of people who say that Stalin was a fascist. I don't like that, just like I don't like saying that Hitler was a socialist. I think they're very similar. I think there's a horseshoe there, or at the very least, they're both coming from very similar sources, a different interpretation of Marxist authoritarianism that Stalin and Hitler both had, and they almost paired up, and they did pair up to divide Poland. That's what scared France and Britain more than just Hitler invading Poland, was the Molotov-Ribbentrop pact between Poland and, between Russia, the Soviet Union, and Germany. So you literally have to have every single party in parliament refuse to work with each other for reform to even get a minority government. I think that's going to happen. Can you talk about history of Northeast Italy on Friuli and the wars in World War I between Russia? If I'm correct, that area that you're asking about, A-Dog, was the battleground for the Austro-Hungarians in the Italian Independence War, and then again during the Great War. And that was land that the Italians got, or the Italians wanted more and more land on the Dalmatian coast in the Adriatic. The Europeans wouldn't give it to them after the war, and that's how Mussolini got his claim to fame. What was Northumbria? Northumbria is the northernmost portion of England. Now, it's not Scotland. England is the largest entity on the British island, on the island of Britannia, or Britain. The Romans called it Britannia. You got England in the southeast, Wales in the west, Scotland in the north. Northumbria is the land stretching from the middle of a country, kind of on a weird sliver, oblong shape, to the border of Scotland. And it's where the city of Ebrukrom, the Romans called it Ebrukrom, and it became known as York is. And during the Anglo-Saxon period in the 700s and 800s, the Dark Ages, or the early Middle Ages is the better term for it, that area was controlled by different competing factions because they weren't a united kingdom, no joke intended. They weren't a united English kingdom yet. It was Wessex, Sussex, Essex, you had Mercia, you had West Mercia, of course you had Wales, and you had Northumbria. They were divided. So I'm being argumentative today for constructive reasons. I hope you don't take it personally, my friend. Not at all. I appreciate your questions, Gaihan. Do you agree with same-sex marriage? You mean same-sex marriage? I'm not making any moral or behavioral or ethical claims. People who are gay or are married are welcome to come here and ask me questions about history. We have people who are gay on this channel all the time. Yeah. Nero, you're asking about Nero. Yes. Is there any hope for this country or the UK? I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's common for people, especially when they see things going away from them in history, to feel that everything is lost. It's common for the older generation to critique the younger generation, and history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And so things kind of, I want to borrow something a little bit from Hinduism and the idea of karma. Things kind of keep going the way they have with slight alterations here and there. What is query history, Alexander? I think the idea of communism is nice, but of course it doesn't work because of Homo sapiens. Communism, it's the argument democracy is the best system except for all the others, or the worst system. Labor and Lib Democrats and Green probably would form a coalition. Not a big enough coalition. It's just not big enough. Labor is really, really unpopular right now, Harry. Is there any hope for this country? Oh, you already asked that. I already answered that. Well, thanks for the refresh history lesson. So cool. I do my best. Yeah, laissez-faire. I would say, Tanuki, that laissez-faire capitalism on the far right and pure communism on the far left are both so hard to achieve that they've never actually really fully happened. Now, this isn't the argument that we haven't tried real communism. It was communism. And the United States in the 19th century, with no social welfare or network, was real capitalism. But the extreme forms of real communism and the extreme forms of real capitalism, you can't ever really get there. The closest I would say with laissez-faire capitalism is Britain and the United States in the early 19th century, and the closest form of pure communism is China and Cambodia in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Adolf was ultra-nationalist. Tell us some about queer history. So, Alexander, a couple of things there. You're asking two different questions. Oh, Mr. Riz, good to see you. I would love to travel and vlog historical places. Consider becoming a member of the channel, and then I can get some money, and we can build there. We're about to go into the second tier of monetization, and that's ad revenue. I'm really excited for that, I think. I don't know. I'm still figuring this all out. But Alexander, he was an ultranationalist, where communism was a global, worldwide theory. Nazism is a nationalistic theory, so it's obviously very different. But they're both authoritarians, they're both totalitarian governments, they're both repressive of individual rights, and whereas the Nazis and nationalists and fascists use the social institutions, communists tend to destroy those institutions and rebuild them, which is why the Christian church was purged under Stalin. But you could argue the Germans did the same thing to the Lutherans by the German Christian church and what they did in the bastardization of ancient Protestant Lutheranism, or medieval Protestant, or modern Protestant Lutheranism, whatever you want to call it. Tell us about some queer history. Okay, a little bit of tie into the Nazis. Ernst Rune, who was executed in the Night of the Long Knives, was a homosexual. There's a fast fact a lot of people don't know. SAS. What do you mean by SAS? You're very welcome. Were any of these leaders gay, and did they hide it? Because I imagine that would be tough. That's a good question, John. A lot of Roman emperors were at least bisexual. There was a Roman emperor, Elagabalus, here's some queer history, who was trans, non-binary, and they turned the royal palace into a brothel. It wasn't the first time, but they were a biological male who would dress as a woman and prostitute themselves as a woman to male clients. So there's a little bit of that. But they were very willing to be open about it in ancient Rome, and especially in ancient Greece. But you get to the medieval period, you've got kings like Edward II in England. I'm trying to think, there was a French one. There's different monarchs at different periods who are considered to be gay. And Lindsay Holiday does a really good video about queer royal history in Europe. I love Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. She's excellent. What even was Thatcher's reasoning for going so strong-arm in the Falklands? You've got to put it in the context of the early 80s. It's a nationalist movement. It's a right-wing reaction. You've got John Paul II. You've got Reagan. You've got this idea of Western exceptionalism and superiority over and against the Cold War and the communists. So they weren't messing around. Direct democracy, in my opinion, the best way to govern a country, unfortunately, very slow. Yes. And to be fair, the founding fathers set up a constitutional republic in the United States to be equally as slow. Go and watch my video on the Declaration of Independence. They did not want a fast-track government with executive orders left and right, judges putting nationwide injunctions, or Congress just zipping through laws because of their politics. They would be astounded and horrified if they could see today. And it's not just the Trumpian era, it's what's happened before then. It's the imperial presidency of the 20th century now leading into almost a semi-monarchy in the 21st century. As an Englishman, I'd like to know who the original Britons were before the Anglo-Romans. Interesting question. So the Anglo-Saxons, and we speak English, I'm speaking English, and I'm from an Angloid country, the United States, were originally, the Anglo-Saxons and the Jutes, the people who settled England, were originally from Germany, Denmark, northern Germany, and that's why English is a Germanic language, partly. It's also partly French, also partly Latin, it's all sorts of things. The Celts were a large network of different tribes of people who had lived in Germany, France, it was called Gaul back then, and Britannia. The Romans defeated them, and then when the Roman Empire collapsed in 410, the last Romans left Great Britain, or left Britannia as they called it. That area became subject to marauders and the new settlers, the Anglo-Saxons, who several centuries later were fighting Vikings who were also trying to settle. So yeah, it's a conglomeration of things, Mr. Riss. Is the European rule ending in the Middle East, South Asia rising economically due to BRICS? India certainly is. I don't know about Middle East. You've got some of it. Saudi Arabia is obviously very influential. You have a lot of economic interest with places like Qatar wanting to be kind of the middleman for all sorts of Middle East geopolitics. But Iran, Syria, definitely behind. Definitely developing. Take the religious issues out. Take the geopolitical issues out. Economically, they're hampered. There is a little bit of a rise. Europe, here's what happens. A society develops and grows industrially, and then eventually, when they reach a certain level of affluence, they stop having children. Their birth rates decline, their native population, their native workforce declines. And it's happened in Europe, it's happening in the United States and Canada, it's happening in Japan and South Korea, it's happening in China, and it's about to start happening in India. Once a population reaches from being the third world to the second or first world, when they reach economic maturity, you could call it, they become more of a service-based technology. They stop direct manufacturing, although the Chinese certainly are not stopping that anytime soon. And better access to healthcare means better access to contraception. Because of Homo sapiens, so the Indian population is the largest in the world, but it's about to plateau. The Chinese have fallen behind India. Watch my video. It comes out in an hour where I talk about Hinduism, the rise of the Varna system, and the caste system in India. Did tribes thousands of years ago smoke marijuana? Ayahuasca, peyote, these different things were available to Native American tribes, and some of them participated in different rituals where they would ingest these. The Mayans did a thing called boofing, where they would literally ingest wine in the bum. I don't want to go into more detail, but they would do orgies. The Romans had orgies. Alcohol has always been kind of the center drug, with different types of hallucinogenics in different societies at different times. Does America have the duty obligation to be the free economic zone of the world? Seems like anyone come here and make money and wire at home while American citizens are increasingly getting squeezed. That's why they put in the remittance tax in the big, ugly, beautiful, whatever you want to call it, the big bill thing. I don't know. It's obviously an obvious desire if you are coming from a country that is struggling to send money back, send funds back, and send information back. This is what immigrants have done in the United States for 2 centuries. So I don't have a problem with it from a historical lens. The rest is just politics. So the British Isles have been split in all kinds of ways during the years. I'm not sure about the English name for it, but they call it Danelaw. Yes, that was the area. Alfred the Great divided England between the Saxons and the Vikings, the Danelaw. Then later the North Sea Empire conquered all of England, Sweyn Forkbeard and Harthacnut, and all of these interesting rulers. Pilgrims were socialists when first arriving in America, only last 2 to 3 years. I think Winthrop changed their model of how they did things. They wanted to share all things in common, but they didn't have any skills for actually producing. Or was it? No, it wasn't the Pilgrims. It was it the Pilgrims? Because I know John Smith did similar things in Virginia. It was Virginia. It was Jamestown. It was not the Pilgrims. What policies did China have that made it more communist than the USSR? There's a couple of different things. So you've got mechanized communism, industrial communism through Stalin's Man of Steel tactics. You also have communism in China, Mao taking communism and applying it to the farmer versus the oppressor versus the oppressed. So the Cultural Revolution, the things like this, was a direct way of using the underclass's angst, which is a Marxist idea, and applying it to the upper class. In my opinion, Nazi Germany was only possible because of the harsh treatment of Germany after the First World War or Second World War. That's what I consider it. I've heard that argument. I don't believe it. If you look at Gustav Stresemann and where Germany was in the mid-20s and the Dawes Plan and Britain and France being more lenient, Germany was fine. It was the Great Depression that set up the Germans, and the Nazis could just point back to the war rather than the actual economic reason they could scapegoat. We lost the war. The same way, so blaming the war is the Nazi tactic. The Nazis also blamed the Jews. Of course, I know you're not doing that, but I'm saying that the Nazis wanted scapegoats. So I don't go with that. Was Rome killed for being gay, or was it he used to throw him under the bus after the fact? Both. And also, the Nazis were very much against homosexuality. They killed millions of homosexuals and other people during the Holocaust. The first transgender surgery had taken place, sex change in the Western world in Germany, in Weimar. So they were obviously very opposed to that. It was all part of a cloud of traditional German values, a a superficial embracing of Christianity that turned out to be totally a lie. Rome was killed because there was a fear that that he would be more popular and lead the essay against Hitler. He wasn't killed specifically for being gay, but he was gay. In fact, when he killed him, I think he was with his lover. Roman Empire was very advanced in terms of expressing sexuality. Very strange to think people blame social media for influencing us. That's true. The Romans, well, upper class Romans especially, the more wealth you have in history, the more activity you can have. Is San Marino the oldest city or country in the world? I don't think so. The oldest city in the world, you've got, wow, it's tough. You've got several different candidates. I can't think of them off the top of my head. I don't know when Chennai, which has become Beijing, was formed, or Shanghai for that matter. Jerusalem's obviously very old. Cairo's extremely old. Thebes is very old. Baghdad. Yeah, maybe it's the oldest city or country in Europe. I'm not sure. Cities in Europe, really, other than Rome, don't really get going until the 2nd or 1st century when the Romans start conquering significant portions of Europe. Special Air Service, British Special Forces ranked number 1 globally to this day. I believe they were founded. Okay, that was the Special Air Forces. Probably what they used to protect their bombers during their raids, like at Dresden. I'm not too sure about. I've heard of them before. I don't know too much. Hello, Casa Doris. Our king 2 generations back was rumored to have a homosexual relationship in hiding. Supposedly the Bernadette family paid was amount to, yeah. Well, I mean, 25% labor, 11% liberal Democrats, 5% green, and you've got to remember it doesn't actually matter how much of a vote you get, matters what your vote is. Because we have, yeah, it's not going to happen, Harry. I know you hate the Reform Party, but they're on the Europe is swinging to the right, and like I've described on this channel before, the right in Europe is even more to the right than the MAGA movement in America. The Helvetian were, yes, they were Celtic peoples. I love your knowledge of Swiss history, of the Canton system, of the democracy. Thank you for sharing that. You always get soldiers who get asked their favorite foreign military to work with, and they always say the Brits. You gotta love the Brits. Yeah, Humphrey, don't do that. That's unhealthy. There are plenty of people that would like to move to the USA. Yes, there are. And there always have been. And SM, yeah, pretty much. I think you missed my question about the fall of Europe and the decline of USA as regional power. I answered it, John. Let me see here. I'm always amazed how Americans treat their poor people. Switzerland is capitalism heaven, but if you do have money, you get help if you want to. Yes, there's a balance, to be sure. A lot of the Scandinavian countries have a good reputation for this. They have a large amount of economic freedom, but they have heavy taxation and a general welfare state that coalesces with free market capitalism. Same in Switzerland. I live where the Danelaw is present. My secondary school was called Danum, and we have a river called River Dom, which is connected to a Roman fortress. That's all over the place in England. If I remember right, San Marino has the oldest still running constitution. Yes, that would make it the oldest standardized government, but it doesn't mean it's the oldest nation on earth. Switzerland is over 700 years old, but of course we had some changes. Yes, Burgundy. I mean, for the vast majority of its history, I mean, during the medieval period, late medieval period, most of Switzerland was just known as Burgundy. Isn't that true? And I know it wasn't all of Switzerland, but yeah, I think my recollection is Switzerland really emerges as a separate entity because of people like Zwingli and Calvin and the Reformation and its influence on Swiss history. By the way, Switzerland is gorgeous. It's so beautiful. I hope you've had a beautiful time with us here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to sign off and head over to Instagram, so if anyone wants to join us over there, we will have another hour of Q&A. Harry, put the Instagram handle one more time in the chat. Yes, Harry, I see your swipe in America, and yes, you are partly right. But yeah, so Harry, my pleasure, Tanuki. We will be back here on YouTube. If you can't join us on Instagram, it's friendly_history1. If you can't join us on Instagram, we'll see Harry if anyone joins us over there. It's been a light crowd today. Then you can join us tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, where I will be answering another hour of your questions here on YouTube. And then Sunday we have our live stream lectures, so you can vote about what topic or topics you want me to discuss. That poll will be coming out later today. I hope everybody has a really wonderful Friday and a great start to their weekend. Some of you are already on Saturday, so yeah. Take care. Oh, good to see you, Texas. Long time. Take care. Have a great weekend. Hopefully, I'll see you in the channel. Hopefully, you've liked and subscribed and all that great stuff. And remember, love history. Bye bye now. Thank you, O, for sharing your knowledge about Scandinavia, by the way, and Tanuki for your knowledge about Switzerland.